When I hear the news that someone is pregnant, my mind usually goes to where I first learned about pregnancy in detail. Twilight Breaking Dawn. Yes, Bella is having a half vampire baby, and yes, pregnancy is supposed to result in the survival of both mother and child. But the image of her little nudger pushing on her stomach from the inside has always remained the number one image of pregnancy for me. As I grew up, I started to delve more into horror films. The reproductive motives of Alien weren't lost on me, and that too added to the feeling of apprehension regarding childbirth. Of course, reality is just as frightening as fiction. I've heard tales of being split open, of losing teeth, and hell, my mom was clawed from the inside by my brother as he neared his birth date. Some of the rumors about pregnancy are over exaggerations. The losing of teeth actually refers to the loosening of teeth, which is temporary, for example. But the glorification of pregnancy in the face of its many downsides has only become more and more common over the years, especially in fiction and fandom spaces, while negative experiences are overwhelmingly ignored or treated as a minority experience.
Some men fetishize pregnant bellies. I get really random graphic DMs about my belly and
Oh
they
my
want to
lord.
do with my belly. It doesn't happen a lot, but now that the bump has grown quite a bit,
Dude.
it just started happening. I saw one this morning and I was like,
That makes me feel kind of weird.
yeah.
That's creepy.
It's one thing to be like attracted to your wife when she's pregnant. I think that's healthy
Yeah.
and normal and good, but just a random pregnant woman?
What do they think they're accomplishing by DMing you?
Anyway.
Dudes are weird.
Dudes are so
Dudes
weird.
be crazy.
Dudes are disgusting sometimes.
No, because let's talk about that. I knew that this was a thing, but I didn't realize how common it was. I think the most foul message I've received was a gentleman that reached out and was like, I've always been fascinated with pregnancy, but I don't plan on having any kids on my own. So I would love the opportunity to pay you to be in the room with you on your special day. In that moment, I was like, I think I want to be gay. Because men just have the audacity to say the most foul things. Like, that is disgusting. That's probably the one that made me the most uncomfortable, but there's been a wide range of stupid comments made. And men are just gross. Men are just gross.
A lot of fiction finds happy endings in the couple having a child. It is the resolution of the heterosexual life path, and one of the last major milestones a woman gets to celebrate. Having a child can be a wonderful thing, but it's not without its sacrifices or downsides. This is not to say that all women secretly regret having children or find the sacrifices that they must make to have them unwarranted, merely that opportunity cost exists. By having a child, women often give up higher pay, changes at promotion, as well as their personal health, safety, and freedom, in many ways that fathers do not have to consider when starting a family. When a woman is pregnant, she is no longer considered a person in her own right, but as an incubator of another being, whose life takes precedence over her own.
Men are going to vote away our right to birth control and abortion because when we have the ability to control when and if we become pregnant, fewer losers get to become fathers. They have a phrase for this, gatekeeping pregnancy, which means women trying to not get pregnant by a man until she finds one that is worth being a parent with. Gatekeeping pregnancy. I can't get over how embarrassing that is to say out loud. Not saying it's all men, but there are many, many men who are starting to realize if people who can get pregnant have complete intentional control over when they get pregnant and who they get pregnant by, they will not be chosen. Like, they're listening to the way that women are starting to talk about motherhood and that, like, I don't want to do it unless I have someone who's going to share the work with me, who's going to be a present father, who I want to replicate this man in another human being. They see that and they're like, yeah, I think we should just go back to when you guys couldn't ask for those things. Like I say, men control our reproduction because if we actually controlled reproduction, we would control everything. And the men in my comments are like, no, that's not true. And then they comment shit like this, like...
This can be seen in how women are told not to eat or do certain things for the baby's health, even things that have little impact, while men's impact on the baby's health is ignored. For example, despite it being well known that the age of the mother correlates to birth defects, something which every older mother is constantly reminded of, and which is used to encourage women to have children at a younger age when they may not be financially or socially ready to be a mother. Men are often left out of the conversation.
Al Pacino just welcomed a new baby at the age of 83. What? Oh my goodness! How is that even possible?
Well, it's possible because men can essentially father a child at any age. Al is 83, but the mother of his child is only 29. But advanced age of the father doesn't come without risk. The older you are, the more mutations you're going to have in your sperm, which increases the risk of birth defects in any child you father. In contrast to men, women have a finite number of eggs and they generally become infertile by around age 45.
Men who have children at older ages are often used as proof that large age gaps are not only acceptable, but preferable. Those cases often ignore that an older father also leads to complications in pregnancy, as pregnancies fathered by older men have a higher chance of ending in miscarriage or stillbirth, or being born preterm. Additionally, older fathers are more likely to have children with birth defects such as cleft lip or a hole in the diaphragm, and the odds increase with each year of paternal age. Some cancers also become more common. A birth registry study of nearly 2 million children in Denmark found that a certain kind of childhood leukemia increases in likelihood by 13% for every 5 years older the father is. The risk of brain cancer and breast cancer are also elevated in people born to older fathers. There are also neurological effects. Children with fathers who are more than 40 at their birth are almost 6 times more likely to have autism than those whose fathers are less than 30, according to one study. Babies born to fathers aged over 50 face an up to 5-fold increased risk of schizophrenia. Obsessive-compulsive disorder, ADHD, bipolar disorder, all are more likely, research indicates, if the father is older. As noted by Alison Motluck in The Perils of Putting Off Fatherhood, Why It Poses Risks to Children's Physical and Mental Health, much is made of the fact that a woman is born with all the eggs she will ever have, that by her mid-30s they start to spoil, and before you know it, she has run out. At about the age of 50 or so, a woman faces a full shutdown of her reproductive capability. Not so for males, who are able to reproduce pretty much until the end of their lives. But research now shows that the longer the sperm factory operates, the more likely it is that glitches will be introduced during the manufacturing process.
Pregnancy is not all rainbows and unicorns and glitter. It is a traumatic experience in which your body completely changes and then you have to get that baby out of your body.
There's a deep violence in how our society handles pregnant women, and pregnancy in general. The clip you just saw is from a video in which the creator, I'll tag her below, basically crowdsources a bunch of different stories from women who have gone through traumatic pregnancies. And it reminded me of a really good post on the antinatalist subreddit that stopped me in my tracks. I can't find it anymore, but in essence, the user, who was a man himself, was talking about how it's extremely violent of men to expect that women will go through pregnancies just so that they can have children. That their desire for a legacy is so important that they will gladly watch their wives suffer or their partners suffer in order to just bring them a child. And of course, many women are willing participants, but how many women, if they were guaranteed the ability to still have a partnership, would forego having children if they could? If it didn't affect their social capital and their social standing, how many women do you think would opt out of having children altogether if they were still viewed as worthy in our society? The level of violence enacted on pregnant bodies by the baby and by the medical system is obscene, yet it's seen as an obligation that women have to follow through on. And then socially, just because you've given a man a child doesn't mean that they'll stay with you, that they'll treat you well, that they won't be going behind your back and doing things that they shouldn't be doing. It guarantees nothing. And knowing all of that, it's so perplexing how doctors will completely stand in the way of women who want to be sterilized. They'll say, well, what if your partner wants children? I'm sorry, am I an incubator? If my partner wants children, then they won't be my partner because I don't want to be partnered with somebody who thinks that I should be able to go through that level of violence just to bring a child into this messed up world. The expectations that women should suffer just to please patriarchal norms is violence, and I reject it completely.
Although men do play a large role in the health of the child, the burden, both physically and psychologically, of gestation and birth lies firmly with the mother. The process of pregnancy is transformative to the cellular level. While some of the horror tropes that come to mind regarding pregnancy are nothing more than an overactive imagination, some parts are true. Every pregnancy over 20 weeks leaves its mark on its mother, as all pregnant women carry some fetal cells and DNA, with up to 6% of the free-floating DNA in the mother's blood plasma coming from the fetus. After the baby is born, those numbers plummet, but some cells remain. In 1996, Diana Bianchi, a geneticist at Tufts Medical Center, found male fetal cells in a mother's blood 27 years after she had given birth. Her body changes and remains changed after pregnancy, but the pregnancy itself is a time of highest concern, as not only is there a high risk of maternal mortality, death from natural causes due to complications during pregnancy, but also the reality that homicide is the leading cause of death for pregnant women.
I saw it, but he begged me to stay.
Which is crazy. Like, these studies weren't even done a year ago. And in Arkansas, Arizona, Texas, and Missouri, you can't even get a divorce if you're pregnant.
Yeah, I think it's really telling that the leading cause of death in pregnancy for women is murder. Like, this insanely physically taxing thing that people go through to create a whole body inside of their body, where you can have hemorrhaging, and you can have clotting and like strokes and pulmonary embolisms. You can have high blood pressure issues that can cause like severe injury and death. So many things that can happen. The leading cause of death in pregnancy is murder. And the biggest portion of those murders of pregnant women comes from their male romantic partners. And obviously not all men. There are great men. There are men who are excited to be fathers and absolutely dote on their wives and make sure that their every little discomfort is attended to immediately. But there are enough men who are violent to the point that the leading cause of death in one of the most dangerous medical situations a person can be in is murder, that we do have to think about that and be careful.
Domestic violence rates have risen over the past few years as the pandemic's lockdowns and economic stresses were considered to be reasons for rising levels of abuse. However, domestic abuse is nothing new. A 1993 study asked why men decide to beat the woman pregnant with their child, and the answers were thematically analyzed into the categories jealousy of the unborn child, anger toward the unborn child, pregnancy-specific violence not directed toward the unborn child, and business as usual. Another study found that men who commit domestic violence may be found among a larger pool of men with poor problem-solving skills. But in addition, they appear to have borderline personality traits, certain types of hostility, and histories of abuse as children that may predispose them to become violent with their female companions. These are explanations and a guide for greater societal change to prevent the perpetuation of abuse, not excuses. The actual excuses that abusive men like to offer, as chronicled by Chuck Derry, who facilitated court-mandated counseling for 18 years, include: she's scared and won't go out and spend money. Get your way. Respect. She won't argue. Feeling superior. Keeps relationship going. She's too scared to leave. Get the money. Get sex. Get control and decision-making. Use money for drugs. Don't have to change for her. Power. Decide where to go. Who to see. What to wear. Control the children. If she's late, she won't be again. Intimidation. She's scared and can't confront me. Can convince her she's screwing up. She feels less worthy, so defers to my needs and wants. She will look up to me and accept my decisions without argument. Decide her social life. What she wears so you can keep your image by how she acts. She's to blame for the battering. She's an object. I get a robot babysitter, maid, sex, and food. Of course, besides the health issues and bodily changes associated with pregnancy is the change in how others treat you. One could argue that the greatest horror of pregnancy is not pregnancy itself, but the restrictions placed upon a woman if she chooses to undergo it. The notion of fetal personhood, an ideology that regards embryos as separate persons with rights at odds with the pregnant person, places the personhood of the mother as being lesser, to the extent of infringing on situations that seem utterly divorced from pregnancy.
Fetal personhood is where you give the rights of a living, breathing child to a fertilized egg. I'm talking about the earliest stages of fertilization. So we have to not only ignore the fact that 3/4 of fertilized eggs actually never implant and they don't turn into actual live births. So when you give an embryo the same rights that you give to a living, breathing child, the difference is whatever the mother does, she's doing to her child. So now you're holding the mother accountable at this standard. That means if she loses the baby or miscarries for whatever reason, that can be investigated. For example, if the mother is anorexic or having issues with eating, maybe she doesn't even know she's pregnant yet and she drinks. What if she's not drinking enough water or pushing herself too hard or running because she's always been a runner and at 8 months pregnant, she can still run a marathon? What if she's not eating the way that some people would consider the healthiest?
What if she's consuming, Diet Coke every day? Or she's having a glass of wine like other countries do all the time? Did you know that they recommend not eating salad because it's one of the number one causes of listeria while pregnant? What if she has soft cheeses that aren't pasteurized or sushi? I mean, the list is endless on things that they do and don't recommend. What if she colors her hair, gets her nails done? In truth, I mean, unless you're living in a bubble, it's like anything that you do while pregnant could potentially be an issue. Every single action that she takes while pregnant can be investigated. It can be looked at. Her text messages could be subpoenaed. Her family could be questioned. You know what happens when 1 in 4 women miscarry? So many of them already blame themselves. So many of them are already so afraid to share that they've miscarried. There's such a stigma already around it. That saying, wait till the first trimester is over to tell anyone you're pregnant, that comes from the stigma of being afraid to talk about it because what if you lose the baby? These are all real emotions that women need to start speaking up about because it's 1 in 4 of us that have miscarried. I have miscarried, and I can tell you what, I sat there saying, what did I do wrong? What did I do wrong? And when that is the standard, it's a problem.
For example, when a woman is pregnant, her DNR can be ignored. That's right, if you are pregnant, you can be kept on life support against your will, and furthermore, you will not be advised that your DNR will be ignored or that there will be restrictions placed on your care. 38 states have identified pregnancy as a condition that may overrule either an incapacitated woman's advance directive or surrogate decision-making. Of these, only 8 states' advance directive documents ask for a woman's pregnancy-specific care preferences. Of the 30 states that restricted choices without withholding or withdrawing life-sustaining therapies from pregnant women, the restriction was only explicitly laid out in advance directive documents in 2 states. 68% of official advance directive forms did not disclose their pregnancy restrictions. Of the 30 states of pregnancy restrictions, 25 specifically invalidated a woman's advance directive during pregnancy. 19 states prohibited a surrogate decision maker from withdrawing life support from a pregnant woman. 18 of the 30 states with restrictions imposed these limits only when, in the opinion of the treating physician, the fetus could survive with continued application of life support to the woman. The remaining 12 states required that life support continue to be provided to an incapacitated pregnant woman until her fetus could be safely delivered, no matter the stage of pregnancy whether the mother became ill or injured or the status of the fetus. Alaska, Georgia, and Oklahoma required physicians to test for pregnancy before withholding or withdrawing life support from female patients of childbearing age. Washington and Idaho did not have a specific statute barring the removal of life support from pregnant women, but did state in their DNR forms that it is not allowed. Quite simply, it appears that incapacitated pregnant women do not have the same rights as non-pregnant women. The laws effectively violate a woman's right to refuse medical treatment, her right to privacy, and her right to terminate a pregnancy, which at this writing is still a right protected in some states by the Supreme Court decision in Roe v. Wade. If you are pregnant, divorce can become difficult, as several states, such as Missouri or Texas, often hold off on finalizing divorce until the baby is born. Considering that pregnant women are most likely to die by homicide, this could easily lead to continued abuse or death by forcing a woman to stay with an abusive ex. While there are no statutes or laws in the books that prevent divorce while pregnant, this doesn't mean that it doesn't happen.
Example of how this can be applied and ask you if this is how the law should work in Florida. If you think about a doctor, a surgeon that goes out on their lunch break, has a few martinis, on the way back to the hospital, drives their car through a stop sign and kills your 26-year-old son or daughter. Under that circumstance, you are allowed to sue in the state of Florida for economic and non-economic damages. Let's say that same doctor had those martinis, made it back to the hospital, operates on your son or daughter, and kills them as a result of negligence or medical malpractice. In that case, you are not allowed to sue in the state of Florida for non-economic damages. Ask yourself if that's how the law should work in the state of Florida.
In Florida, if you are over 25, are unmarried, or without children under the age of 25, and killed by medical malpractice, you can't sue, neither can your family. This law has been around for 33 years. 33 years saying that if you are unmarried and childless, your life is worthless.
That's me. This is a phenomenal article, and I'm going to link it in my bio. If you remember last year, Jezebel covered my story, and Kylie was the author then as well. And Huge shout out to Kylie for being honestly like the most compassionate, gentle, and respectful journalist I've ever worked with. Honestly. So I also love that she used this picture of me from when I was like at the state doing some activism stuff. I look so mean. I can't even do that face because I looked like that because I had Botox in my forehead. And it made me look so mean. But honestly, like, it's such a vibe, right? Like, I look badass. I look scary. I love it. It's cool. It's like the best pick for it. Because I look like I mean fucking business. Because I do mean fucking business. Alright? Make sure you go and read the article, especially if you want to see what the hospital has to say for themselves about it. What their comment was. Okay. Spoiler alert, the comment's not that interesting. I just really want you to read the article, honestly. But now I feel like a jerk being like, go see what they had to say like it's something dramatic, and it's literally not. But either way, it's a great article. Okay. Share it with your friends. Bye-bye.
You may be denied medication on the grounds of having potential pregnancy, despite how much that medication may be necessary to protect your quality of life or continued life. Even those of us who do not wish to get pregnant, who do not engage in heterosexual sex, or who are infertile, must acknowledge the role that the expectation of the female ability to get pregnant has in the treatment of all women, both for those who can get pregnant and those who cannot. Pregnancy is a female-only experience, and therefore an expectation placed only upon women, regardless of an ability to actually become pregnant. Therefore, feminism must acknowledge the ways in which pregnancy can be weaponized against women to encroach on their agency and free will, as well as work to address the specific needs that pregnant women and mothers have as a result of being able to have kids. Some points that need to be addressed include creating a better society which doesn't systematically disadvantage and harm pregnant women and mothers, creating a society in which pregnant women and mothers' financial independence, careers, and freedom aren't limited, improving the medical system and knowledge of women's anatomy and specific medical needs so every woman has access to the best treatment possible, eliminating medical abuse and medical neglect, providing informative and female-centered sex education, and providing free and accessible birth control. Even if you never intend to get pregnant, if it is impossible for you to get pregnant, or if you identify as something other than a woman, the life of a potential fetus is considered to be worth more than your own if you are female.
Ever wonder where the phrase barefoot and pregnant came from? This is a crazy good article on Slate. It's by Catherine Jameson, and it traces the etymology of this phrase, dating back to like the 1930s. But here's the part I just wanted to highlight. You got to read the whole thing, though. These are the words of a Southern politician. Let's see here. Paul Van Dalsam, okay, 1963. He said in a speech, "We don't have any of these university women in Perry County, but I'll tell you what we do up here when one of our women starts poking around in something she doesn't know anything about. We'll get her an extra milk cow. If that doesn't work, we get her a little more garden to tend to. And if that's not enough, we get her pregnant and keep her barefoot." This doesn't surprise me to learn this, but it's just so disturbing. What do you think?
This is why pregnancy, and furthermore sex, has always been at the center of feminist discussion. As Andrea Dworkin wrote in Right Wing Women, women are interchangeable as sex objects. Women are slightly less disposable as mothers. The only dignity and value women get is as mothers. It is a compromised dignity and a low value, but it is all that is offered to women as women. Having children is the best thing women can do to get respect and be assured a place. The fact that having children does not get women respect or a place is almost beside the point. Poor women don't get respect and live in dung heaps. Black women don't get respect and are jailed in decimated ghettos. Just plain pregnant women don't get respect, and the place they have is a dangerous one. Pregnancy is now considered a cause of battery. Stress on the male, don't you know? In perhaps 25% of families in which battery occurs, it is a pregnant woman who has been battered. In fact, having children may mean both increased violence and increased dependence. It may significantly worsen the economic circumstances of a woman or a family. It may hurt a woman's health or jeopardize her in a host of other ways. But having children is the one social contribution credited to women. It is the bedrock of women's social worth. Despite all the happy smiling public mommies, the private mommies have grim private recognitions. One perception is particularly chilling. Without the children, I am not worth much. The recognition is actually more dramatic than that. Much more children. Without the children, I am not.
Men are so glad that they're not the ones who have to get pregnant and give birth, but they are also so mad that we're the ones that do. It's the basis of like all oppression of women. If you control reproduction, you control everything. You control the economy, you control how many soldiers they have for wars, you control how many capitalists they have to consume, you control who's in the future. Like if women have the power to decide if and when we want to become mothers, that's also the power to decide which men get to become fathers. And I don't think a lot of men want to live in the world where they have to prove to women that they are worthy of continuing their legacy and having children. The number one cause of death for pregnant women, more than the top 3 obstetric causes of death, like hemorrhage, blood clots, is literally being murdered by a man. I think it makes some men so angry that they cannot control something so important. Like they've won, they run the world, they control everything, but they cannot control the source of life. There's such power in controlling the source of life, and only we can control that. The only way they can take control is by force, violence, and laws, which they do. Which is why attacks on reproductive freedoms, on birth control, abortion, women's healthcare in general, it's not about life, it's not about religious freedom, it's not about women's health and safety, it's about control. It's about controlling women. It's about men being so mad that we can control one thing, the most important thing that they cannot control. They were not given that power and we were, and they are so mad about it.
This, dear viewers, is where we part. As we approach 2024, I am interested a lot in the specific areas of basically birth control, because I've heard of Republicans going after the trying to basically bring back the Comstock laws, which made it illegal to basically send anything about birth control over state lines. In addition, I know that they're going after no-fault divorce, 2 topics that I will be discussing shortly. But there's a lot of things that we take for granted as 21st century women. I'm 22, and so I didn't have to grow up in a world where, abortion wasn't an option. I didn't have to grow up in a world where getting married meant you might be stuck with that man forever. And thankfully, those are 2 things that I won't have to deal with, hopefully, because I'm gay. But that doesn't mean that people that I know, other women around me, that my friends and family won't have to face the changes that are going to come if those laws are taken away. We take so much for granted because if it didn't happen in front of us, it didn't happen at all. It's always been that way. In the same way that children who are born in the 2010s have always known the internet to be there, I have always known women to have these rights. And it is entirely frightening to think that these may be taken away in my lifetime, when it was my mother's generation, my grandmother's generation, who just got those. It's a bit of a harrowing thought. If you guys have any comments, questions, or concerns, let me know in the comment section down below, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.